Road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, your Realtor Growth listeners. Today I have Lauren Hardy. She is a wholesale real estate investor. Now you might ask, hey, what's a wholesale? Because I've had other investors on here that do the fix and flips. I know you do the fix and flips. I have some people that buy and hold, have done land. I don't think I've had, for the most part, people that have a big portion of their business coming from wholesaling. So, I mean, can you describe yourself and kind of what you do?
Yeah. Hi. Well, my name is Lauren Hardy. I'm from Orange County, California, and I am a real estate investor. And I primarily focus. Now, I've done all sorts of things. I've done the rentals. I've done spec building and all sorts of different things in real estate. But I would say my business at this moment is primarily focused on wholesaling and house flipping. Okay. And I think what might make me a little bit different is that I do it virtually. So I do it out of state. Because I live in Southern California and it's super hard to find a good deal here. So I've made it my living for the last, probably 5 years that I do everything out of state.
How do you, being that you're not physically there, are you able to assess the properties and then also get the after rehab value, kind of knowing where the numbers sit?
Yeah. So it's a lot of coordination to get it done. But when I first got started, I did work our backyard. I know you're from San Diego, right? Yeah. So I worked our backyard. And when you're from California and you invest here, it's pretty standard that your net is pretty wide. I was going clear up to Northern LA, all the way to the Inland Empire. I mean, some of the homes that I would flip were like 2 hours away from me with traffic. So after a while of doing that, I realized, I might as well just be out of state because it's that, far away. I pretty much am doing this virtually. To coordinate and to figure out, how much repairs are, it is tough and it can be challenging. That's why I do wholesale houses as well. So does your audience know what wholesaling is? Should I get into explaining?
Some people might, some people, yeah. So
I'll do a real just easy explanation of wholesaling. So what wholesaling is I will get properties under contract. I do a lot of marketing. I do a lot of direct to seller marketing, like think postcards, think a TV commercial, radio ads, stuff like that. And I get a lot of sellers coming to me and they're interested in selling their house. And I can't possibly buy them all. Some just don't meet my standards, my investment criteria. Some are just not in like a territory that I work. So instead of just getting rid of the lead saying, hey, sorry, I can't help you, I still can monetize that lead. So what we do is we do negotiate the property purchase price low enough where I could sell this contract to another investor, and that investor is going to probably fix and flip it or keep it as a rental. So I have a huge network of investors that I work with, and I sell my houses or contracts to. So one of the benefits of being a wholesaler is when I get a property under contract, if I have any interest in it, I can test it out and send it to the local buyers and see how much interest I have. And if I get enough interest, that tells me maybe this is something I want to buy and I don't want to give it up. But if I don't get any interest, then that tells me, hey, Lauren, like maybe, this one's got issues or maybe it's not in a great area. Sometimes we'll have interest, but the buyers will walk the property because we do, and we coordinate an inspection for them. They will walk the property and they give me feedback. So they'll say, oh yeah, there's mold in the bathroom. It needs a new roof. So all that feedback is super helpful. And it's basically part of my due diligence process. So I can make that decision. Do I want to wholesale it or, do I want to keep it for myself? So that's one of the ways. Another way is I actually have boots on ground. So I do have boots on ground. They aren't inspectors per se, but they'll take very detailed, good detailed photos and videos, and they'll point out, issues that the home has. So between a lot of photo, a lot of video, we can put a construction budget together that's fairly close.
Well, let's rewind. I mean, you talked about that you first started local in your area in Orange County. Who was a young Lauren? Growing up, was her family into real estate? Were you interested in real estate? Who was a young Lauren?
A little bit. So I started when I was 25. So it was young Lauren. I'm 35 now. So it was young Lauren. And when I got started, the reason I got into it really was just I did not want to work a full-time job anymore. I had my daughter pretty young. I had my first kid at 24 years old. So by the time I had my first kid, I realized that working a corporate job is really tough while being a mom, at the same time. I never saw my kid. I mean, she was at daycare all day, Monday through Friday, from 7:30 in the morning to like 6 o'clock at night. And I did not want to raise my child that way. I was that child. So, I had both working parents, and I wanted a different lifestyle than my parents had, raising me. My parents, you asked what they did. So my mom was in IT. My dad was a college professor, but on the side, my dad did start buying rentals at some point. I want to say maybe when I was like 10 years old, he started buying rentals. And funny enough, he grew up in a small town in Eastern Ohio. So he started buying rentals where he grew up. And it was a very, very small town. This isn't like the hottest place to invest. But he bought a bunch of rentals kind of in the same neighborhood, and it was a way for him to make some extra income, on the side of his, his teaching job, and visit his mom. He could go in town and visit his mom and kind of go back to his hometown a couple times a year. So I would say he was a huge influence in getting into real estate. As far as like, why did I start house flipping? Honestly, I just wanted to quit the full-time job. My brother started flipping houses about a year or two before. So I just said, all right, teach me how to do this. I'll figure it out. And as long as I don't have to work my full-time job, I'm good. So yeah,
What
that
were you
was
doing in corporate world?
I worked corporate real estate. So I was on the commercial side. I graduated during the recession. It was like right when the recession hit. And I was working at Sperry Van Ness, which is a commercial real estate firm. And my thought was I was going to be like in commercial real estate, like maybe a broker or something. Like that was the path I was going down. And the recession hit, and that really changed my path. And it just did not work out for me in commercial. But it's okay, right? Because, I am stoked on the path I am on now. So
Everything happens for a reason. I mean, were
right.
you in the corporate world? Were you getting a salary, or were you getting commission? Or
A salary. So when at first I was commissioned only, and then I found a job later after Sperry, I found a job working for Subway restaurants on the tenant side. So I was getting a salary there. I was working like internally, like doing franchise sales, scouting locations, negotiating new leases, new locations. It was in the Subway like franchise development department. Then I got a job at the Irvine Company, which you might know of Irvine Company. And so again, very just kind of salary position, working, internal in their like construction TI department. So when I first got started house flipping, just to give you like a perspective of where my mindset was, I always knew I always had it in me that I wanted to be an entrepreneur of some kind. Didn't exactly know what or how. But at this time, I was just so desperate to just not to be in corporate world. Like I just didn't like the jail of 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. So it wasn't so much money focused. At the time, I was only making like 55,000 a year salary. So I remember like talking to my brother who was flipping houses, and I was like, okay, all I have to do, because at this time I'm now pregnant with my second daughter. So I'm going, okay, daycare is going to cost about this much. I calculated all the expenses. And I remember I said, I only need to make about $36,000 a year in flipping houses if I don't have to send my kids to daycare. that'll be about a wash, which is like so funny, looking back. I was like, only 36K. That was my first goal, is like, can I just find a way to make $36,000 and I can stay home? I don't care. That's all I wanted.
So you okay. The bar, I guess, is fairly low, right? Of what you have to accomplish to get there, right?
Right.
And your brother was doing it for a year, 2 years before you got into it. How much success was he having at that time?
He was doing pretty well. At that time, it was pretty easy to flip houses. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was easy to find a deal. So I want to say maybe he flipped like 3 houses before me. I mean, it wasn't like a huge volume, but it was enough where like he was making pretty good money, on his own. Like, he didn't have to have a job. Like, so it was enticing for me, but I wouldn't say he was, like a millionaire by by any means.
Was he kind of your coach? Was he your guiding force when you got into the business?
Yeah, for sure. So the way I learned the business was through some education courses he had already purchased. So, nowadays you can find education for real estate investing everywhere, and it comes on these online platforms. But back then, this is like 10 years ago, it used to come on these CDs in a binder. Like, it would be a binder with like a bunch of CDs, and you would pop the CD and listen to it like in your car. And then the binder might have some pages of like corresponding documents to go with the course. So he came over when we kind of started talking about, oh, maybe you should try house flipping, and to make 36 grand, you probably only have to do one deal, Lauren. Like, that's all you got to do. So my bar was so low. I was like, okay, I could do one deal a year, right? Like, so he just came over, brought me the binder with the CDs, and I digested, went full in, listened to that thing in a week, and was like, all right, when do I start? Like, I'm going to go, like, I'm ready. Right. So that's kind of how I learned, like, the how-tos was from some education that I, bummed off my brother. And then when it came down to like having kind of specific questions, I could always, give him a call. And we just came up with the deal that, he would find the money and he would fulfill it, and I could watch and ride along and like learn, how he does it. And then, we'll split it 50-50. At this time, I didn't have any money, so I had to come up with a marketing budget. To get these deals, you have to do some direct to seller marketing, which costs money. So I opened up a credit card, and it had like a limit, I think, of like $11,000. And that was how I got my marketing budget. So, I literally started the business with a credit card with like nothing and no money in my bank account. But I just, I had this burning desire to get out of my full-time job. So I was pretty motivated.
With the first conversation, when you're actually getting the calls from the actual owners of the property, compared to you getting a phone call today or the last time you got a phone call, right? What's something you've picked up and learned and grown in those conversations?
So I don't talk to sellers very much anymore. I've got a team, and the one thing I hate the most is talking to sellers. That is the number one thing I cannot stand. And when I was doing it for the first couple of years, I was like, this is the first thing when I can afford to hire somebody. I never want to talk to sellers ever again. Sellers have a way of intimidating you and strong arming you at times to make bad decisions, to overlook things in their house. They can be real pushy. They can get real feisty and litigious. And so they could be very scary. And when I first got started, I was very intimidated by talking to sellers. I think the worst thing was making the offers that I was going to make, because my offers had to be low enough where I needed to be able to profit. And these sellers, like, they don't like that. Like, they want to profit. They want to make money, so they would, call thinking that they're going to get this like market price offer that like a traditional home buyer that's going to get a conventional loan and live in the house would make. And sometimes my offer was like $100,000 less than that. And that was always a very uncomfortable conversation. I'd get yelled at all the time and cussed out. And I think especially being in California, sellers are very, very aware of the value of their real estate here, more so than in other states.
Mm.
So those conversations could get pretty uncomfortable at times. So I learned I had to really like develop a script that was as non-confrontational as possible because I hated getting yelled at. Like I hated the way that they would respond. So I literally, like, every time a conversation went really bad or poorly, I would write 3 different ways that I could have said that, delivered the offer, delivered that message where, like, they can't yell at me. Like, it would be ridiculous if they yelled at me. If they did yell at me, like, they're the weirdo, they're the crazy person. So now I think that, like, that script, like, has now, made it, where I give my script for free. I have coaching clients and now they get to take that script and they're like, I love your script. I'm like, yeah, it's because like I got yelled at so much. So, I think now I'm not as intimidated by sellers. Because bigger picture. So like my big fear back then, and I don't know if like maybe you can relate being an entrepreneur, or anybody listening to this, like if you're like a newer entrepreneur, I don't know what your biggest fear is, but my biggest fear was getting sued. That
Mm.
was it. My brain went all the time to like, this seller could sue me. No joke. Like I literally thought like a seller could sue me for sending them direct mail.
Mm.
Cause like they would say that. They would like call me like, if you ever send me another mail piece, I'm gonna sue you. And like me being 25, I was so naive. I was like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna sue me and like I'm gonna end up on Dateline. Like what? Like I used to really think that. Like my brain would go like down this rabbit hole of like, oh my God, they can like ruin my life and then I'm gonna go to jail. Like I can't go to jail. So I think that like one of the most beneficial things that ever happened to me is I did actually get sued.
Mm.
And I learned so much about how expensive it is to sue someone and how difficult these cases are. And like, so when someone's threatening to sue, like it's actually very difficult. It's a lengthy and very expensive process. So likely a seller isn't going to go through that effort because sent them a piece of mail,
Unless they're doing it themselves, their attorney, they're doing it themselves.
Right.
I've been sued before, so I definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what, I mean, well, I guess let's talk about that moment when you got that actual notice that you were getting sued. What was going through your mind?
Oh, I mean, I thought I was going to die. I literally thought I was going to die. It was the most stressful moment of my life.
What did you plan to do? I mean, so you're stressed out. What's going to happen next? Did you have thoughts at that time that you're going to go back to the corporate world, or what was going through your mind and what was allowing you to kind of keep pushing forward with your
Yeah.
business?
So, I mean, ironically, my biggest fear was being sued. And it was the second year of my business I got sued. So it was like right there in the beginning, the universe just put my fear right in front of me. And this lawsuit was just very unfortunate. Like it wasn't, sometimes you just get sued, like, and it's not your fault and you didn't do anything. For me, I basically bought a lawsuit. I bought a property. To give you an explanation of what happened here. I purchased a property from someone who traded notes.
Mm.
And so he had a note on this property. He was a note trader and he took the home back because the borrower defaulted.
Mm.
So now this company, it was an investment firm that specialized in note trading, now owned the property. It was real estate owned. Okay. It's the same thing as if Bank of America took the house back, but it's a company, like a smaller company instead of Wells Fargo. Right. So there's no difference. This house went through the full foreclosure process and, is now real estate owned. They do not specialize in house flipping. They just specialize in the paper behind it. So I had met this guy at a real estate club. He told me what he did. I said, yeah, if you ever end up taking back homes, like I'll make offers on them. So he let me know of this opportunity. I made an offer for the house and, I got the property and I bought it. The property was still occupied by the borrower who defaulted. And so I had to evict her. She was not going out willingly. So during that eviction process, she made attempts to unwind her foreclosure. She was saying that it was done fraudulently, and she was like a conspiracy theorist, and she found some attorney who I think she had a relationship with or something, somebody who wasn't charging her. She definitely wasn't paying for the counsel. And it's not really hard for them to put some documents together and file a lawsuit. So her lawsuit, to unwind a foreclosure, you have to basically seize the property in a lawsuit. And I was the person holding the hot potato. So I had to get sued. The bank, but prior to me, not really bank, but investment company, they got sued as well. So we got sued together. And then I can't remember if they sued even the previous note holder who they bought it, because they're saying the fraud happened like before even they bought it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I should remember that detail. It was like 2 years of my life. So here I am, innocent, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 27-year-old with like a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, something like that. My kids were super young. I don't even remember how old they were. They're so little, I'm getting served this lawsuit, and I'm just like, the sad thing about lawsuits too is like they'll defame you. I mean, they write some pretty nasty stuff in there, and it's part of the game. They want, a judge to think you're a real bad person and that he should side with them, so just reading the lawsuit was very, very difficult. It was very stressful. When I first got it, yeah, it felt like I was dying. I mean, I literally was like, oh my gosh, my life is over, like completely over. And I didn't know what to do. And I remember like Googling like how to get through a lawsuit. And I remember like this one article said, if you ever get sued, the thing is the only way to get through it is to get through it. Like you just have to go through the process. There is nothing you can do to speed up the lawsuit. It can be a very lengthy, tedious process. I ended up being in this lawsuit was not even like, I would say, that big of a deal, like in comparison to other lawsuits, but it lasted about, I want to say 18 months to 2 years, the whole thing. They can push it out. They push out like depositions, and they file paperwork to push out hearing dates. And they play these games hoping to drain you financially in legal fees. So it's super, it was super stressful. But here's the thing. When I got served that lawsuit, I mean, dying wasn't an option. I had 2 kids. So like I couldn't, like, I wasn't going to die. Like, getting a full-time job, like that wasn't really an option. Like that's not like I was committed to like being home with my kids. So the only option I had was to make a lot of money so I could pay for this. And so that's what I did. I just focused like crazy to make a ton of money. So if I lost this thing, I could pay back the investors that invested in this deal with me, that I could pay legal fees. And it ended up like I ended up more successful, closing more deals than I ever had. We did totally fine in that lawsuit, and it settled for a very, very like $4,000. No joke. Like the lady was so mad because she had spent more money in legal fees. Like she spent like 20 grand or something in the end. We only paid her like $4,000. And yeah. And that's the thing, is settling is just part of the game. Like, we could go to trial, but then that's that much more expensive. So you have to kind of go, okay, like the judge, can convince, the other party, like, hey, you don't have a shot at this. Like you might want to settle. So she took it. I ended up okay. Once we flipped that house, I made like 90 grand on that house. So it was like, it ended up working out fabulously for me, and I survived the whole thing. And in the end, I wouldn't ever change anything. Like, I'm so glad that happened to me, because if that didn't happen to me, I would still be here today, terrified of getting sued and constantly bending over
Mm.
in business negotiations, like thinking I'm going to get sued. So like I better be just like a doormat to like anyone that, threatens or strong arms me. But now like I know how the legal system works. So I can, push back if I ever have somebody start threatening me or anything, which it happens in business. I can push back and hold my own now.
From that experience, are there extra questions you ask now or have your team ask when someone's trying to sell you a note, like from a private investor?
So I haven't done a note deal like that. Not saying that actually, no, we did one. We did one. I take that back. Um, you know, I don't know if there's anything I could have done. Honestly, they said the guy did say she's a little crazy. He
Mm.
said she's a little crazy. The one thing I take back that I did, because there's nothing I could, it was such a good deal. It's like there's nothing like legally I did everything right. Like, how was I gonna know that she'd lose her mind and really like sue us all and that, like I would have had no way of knowing that. The one thing I messed up is I still have a lot of compassion, but I used to be very compassionate when I would have tenants and I'd ask them to leave and I would get on the phone with them and I'd talk to them. And I called her up on the phone. So we served her notice and then I called her up on the phone. And in that phone call, it was 45 minutes and she's, trying to convince me that I've been defrauded. And being so young and naive, I kind of believed her. And so, like, we were talking, I was saying, listen, I'll do whatever I need to do to make this right. Well, that phone call ended up in that lawsuit, and lots of lies were said about what I said in that phone call. So, don't ever get on the phone with a tenant that like you're evicting. If it's maybe a quick phone call, whatever, but like put everything in writing, communicate in writing. I will never make that mistake again. If I ever have somebody that even sounds a tiny bit litigious, I don't have phone conversations with them.
Makes sense. I mean, I do it all the time with clients. I mean, anytime we talk on the phone, even have a follow up email or something to concur with that conversation. It's yeah, we all don't hear what the other person says sometimes.
Well, the thing that I was one of the causes of action, there was like 12 of them, but one of them was called Promissory Estoppel. So what
Oh,
that means is I promised to sell her the house back.
oh wow.
She said, I promised to sell her the house back at a certain price. And she took out a loan from her sister's 401k to pay me.
Mm,
And that loan incurred a $20,000 like fee because of like when you take out of a 401k too early, there's a tax penalty. So she incurred a tax penalty for her sister. Her sister was trying to save her house. This lady was, I mean, crazy, right? Like I didn't say I'm going to sell your house for this price. It wasn't that conversation, but she heard it that way.
yeah.
So then I was being sued for that, along with other things, right? One of it was that $20,000 that I owe her sister back because she went ahead and did that. It's crazy, like what you can be sued for other people mismanaging their life.
You talked about learning from your brother a little bit when you first started in the business. Is your brother still in the business?
Not really. No. Yeah, I think he kind of lost interest in the business, over the years, but I didn't. So I ended up kind of going all in it. And he's trading stocks now.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Where do you see your business expanding to? I know you've already done, I mean, other states. Do you ever plan to go outside the country, or is it just other states, or what are your plans?
Oh man, I mean, I would love to go outside the country if maybe when my kids are older, I can and travel a little bit more. But for now, I'm doing everything out of state. I was primarily wholesaling for the last few years. Not because I love wholesaling, because it's not my favorite thing. But I started a coaching program and I got into kind of the coaching side of things. I host a podcast now. So I kind of got into this content creation kind of influencer industry. And so for a couple years, I needed time to like learn how to create and produce content. So the house flipping, I just didn't have enough time to dedicate to it. In the last year, though, I realized like something's missing. Like I'm not enjoying what I do. And really, what I enjoy doing is the design and the building. I love doing deals. Like I love, raising the capital and closing on it, and then all the construction stuff that comes in between, which are always funny, interesting stories. I love working with a crew and a team. But most importantly, I love the design. I love that's like, I can do that all day. It doesn't feel like work. So this year I started flipping again. So it's been really fun to like start, closing on some deals and putting projects together. My goal is just to do bigger deals. I just want to keep like growing. Maybe it's, maybe a subdevelopment or, multifamily, something bigger. I think my big end goal is I'd like to own a hotel. So I'd like to get into hospitality, but I think I'm like 5 years away from that. I'm not quite ready yet.
But you'll still keep the coaching business together?
Yeah, I got the coaching business figured out. So now, I know how to put content and I know how to do it, and I got a studio and I know how to work my equipment. I mean, I'm good. So yeah, I've got the coaching thing down. I still have the coaching going. I still host the podcast, but now I'm kind of back onto doing projects again, which I really enjoy.
I mean, when you talk about the coaching, right? I mean, it seems like, especially in this day and age, we have so many people out there that are coaches, investors, like trying to teach other people. I mean, I use the stat that one of the bigger investment companies in San Diego makes more money on their coaching than they actually do on their real estate. And they do some of the most business. So there's a lot of coaches out there. When someone's looking for the right coach to follow, I mean, what are some questions to actually see if that coach is really doing what they're saying and is the right fit for them?
For sure. Yeah, I would say there's definitely a lot of that. I think, and I have a theory that the most expensive coaching programs are the worst, and those are usually the people not doing it. So, and I think it's because like they're so focused on creating content and in advertising, and they have such a good like marketing presence that they can command like, a $10,000 plus like cost of their coaching program. Those are usually the coaches that actually aren't in the business. So like the more expensive the program, usually like the worst. I've taken so many programs, right? So it didn't just it started with the book of CDs and it didn't end there, right? So I've taken them like a lot of the ones well-known like coaches around here. And there's some that are really good, and then there's some that are like not that great. A lot of people are been getting into coaching lately, and they underestimate what it's the work it takes to put a good program together, and they just slop videos together without any thought. They grab videos from maybe podcast episodes they did or interviews or lives and then put it in the program, and you see like their program is like a hodgepodge of videos, but you can tell like it wasn't like with intention of teaching someone like a course. So that like definitely frustrates me. But it's like you really won't know like until you buy it, right? So I think like having positive reviews is important. So one thing that Wholesaling Inc. does that like I haven't seen anyone do is we have a ton of student reviews. If you go to virtualinvestingmastery.com, scroll at the end of the page, I have a ton of student reviews. Those are my students. And it's pretty hard to get someone to do a video review, by the way. So like if you look at all our programs, like you see how many students were willing to do it. We also interview our students on the podcast. So you can just listen to our student interviews, and hear like, hey, this was like a real person who had no experience, and he, bought an education program and got something out of it. A lot of the other educators, they don't have that. So I think that's, you want to look for some like positive reviews for sure.
Well, Lauren, I appreciate you being on the Roach Growth podcast. I mean, hopefully everyone here got some great nuggets. I mean, what's the best way if people are listening, looking to hear more of your journey, maybe go to some of your classes, some of your events? I mean, what's the best way of them kind of staying in contact?
Yeah, I think Instagram is a great way. So my Instagram handle is This Mom Flips. And then if you are interested in coaching, I also have some free stuff on my website. So you can go to laurenhardyco.com.
Well, again, Lauren, thank you for being. I'm going to finish out one last question. You talked about reviews. I mean, I think any business owner out there, I mean, can probably want more reviews than they currently have. And you've talked about kind of the abundance of reviews you're getting for your platform. What have you found the best way of getting reviews from your clients?
So it does help that getting them on our podcast is, listen, these students, they start out by discovering our podcast, and then they have this dream like, oh, one day I'm going to be on this podcast. So inviting them after they close their first deal to be on the podcast is a huge motivator, and they're usually really excited, so they, at that time is when we grab them and kind of say, hey, and if you could, help me out and give me a review, that'd be great. So you've got to kind of have something to offer, I've noticed, to get a review. Otherwise, like, most people aren't going to really do it.
I think it's so key. It's timing for everyone. You could be the greatest at whatever you do out there and have the greatest product. Yet you have to remember, you're doing your business every single day. Sometimes your clients or your customers aren't doing that every single day. So it's on you to be there when you need them and to kind of help them. I mean, one of the nuggets that I picked up from someone else on the podcast previously was that when you do something fantastic, go for the review.
Yeah.
If it's transactions and whatever it might be, do something fantastic, just like you talked about when they do their first deal, go for the review.
Yep.
Again, thank you, Lauren, for being here. Everyone listening, please. I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. Lauren, I mean, I think a lot of people listening, if they were in their biggest fear of talking about the lawsuit, probably would have went a different direction. Yet she had that big why. And there's probably a big why for the people listening right now in your life. And you're trying to figure out, well, what's the path? How can I help my kids? How can I help my family? How can I help my parents? Whoever it might be, find that big why. If you have that big why and you know what that big why is, anything is possible, because you're going to, like Lauren said, she's not going to go back to that fear. She already passed her fear. So thank you guys. Please subscribe, please share, and go find Lauren. Bye, everyone.